The Prime Minister, in his own words, in City AM, vowing to unleash the animal spirits of the private sector. There he is, look. It was intoxicating stuff, but does it stack up? Welcome to the Week in Business with me, Christian May. Now, it's no secret that the government is on a push for economic growth, and it's no secret that it isn't going very well. Quick recap on how we got here. Labour assumed that they would benefit from a stability dividend, a competence dividend, the moment they took office. The expectation was that their sensible, centrist leadership would be recognised and welcomed by businesses, employers and investors, and that the chaos of the dying days of the Tory regime would be replaced by optimism and confidence. Now, this was always an ambitious expectation, made less likely to work by the fact that ministers spent the entire summer and autumn talking about how terrible things were and how unpleasant their first budget was going to have to be. Do you remember all that? It was misery on toast, served up day after day, and they very nearly talked the economy into a recession as businesses held off hiring and investing. And then came the budget, with tens of billions of pounds heaped onto businesses in extra taxes and higher costs. Sweeping pay rises were granted to the public sector, funded by the private sector, with a mountain of additional burdens promised courtesy of the monumental Employment Rights Bill. Business confidence tanked, consumer confidence followed suit, and across the country firms prepared to cancel their hiring plans, freeze investment, increase their costs and generally hunker down. And by January of this year, 6 months into office, the government realised that something needed to change, not least their tone. The Chancellor gave her big growth speech at the end of that month, and she could have been talking about a different country. Gone was the doom and gloom of the previous months, replaced with a rictus grin and endless platitudes about growth, entrepreneurs, dynamism and economic ambition. There was also, to be fair, and as I have said before, a lot of good policy announcements at the start of the year in areas such as planning reform, house building and infrastructure investment. The next big pro-growth push came from the Prime Minister. In a word, deregulation. Now, if the Prime Minister discovers it's too difficult to get anything done, that even the might of Downing Street comes up against a chorus of "it can't be done," then what hope have the rest of us got? Starmer has vowed to slash red tape and demolish the blockers and the bureaucrats. Not for the first time, I found myself thinking that if he'd pumped this out on the campaign trail, I might have voted for him. And this brings us to the Prime Minister's article in City AM this week. It was well written, it was well argued, it was full of ambition on how to unleash businesses and support the wealth creators of this country, and we gave it a good show and we were pleased to run it. The PM wanted to speak directly to City AM's readers and to make his argument. Happy to help. But there's something not quite right here. In his article, Starmer heaps praise on entrepreneurs who work day and night to build a business from scratch, and the family companies that have passed know-how across the generations. Well, those entrepreneurs are currently braced for a spike in the cost of employing people in their fledgling businesses, while the family firms that Starmer celebrates have been knocked for six by potentially ruinous changes to the inheritance tax system. Now, the PM writes that economic growth is the number one mission of this government, but the evidence suggests this zeal is more of a panicked afterthought than a foundational purpose. On the day that the PM's article ran in City AM, the Resolution Foundation, a think tank with close links to Downing Street, warned that the UK was entering recession territory as firms adapt to a wave of costs and tax increases coming into effect next month, alongside the imposition of new employment legislation that makes a mockery of Starmer's claim to be slashing regulations that hold businesses back. The government's deregulation agenda is welcome, but it only feels radical because it's a Labour government doing it. It isn't actually that radical at all. It should have happened years ago, and we can slam the Tories for not lifting a finger in this area, but we shouldn't confuse this government's regulatory housekeeping with a Big Bang-style revolution, because it isn't. And the areas where Labour has been bold, or reckless, depending on your view, on business taxes, on wage costs, on employment law, are without doubt now holding back economic growth, fueling inflation and undermining confidence. And it will take more than a punchy op-ed in our newspaper to right those wrongs. And with the sun beating down on us here in the square mile, my optimistic end note this week is the news that London has edged closer to becoming the world's top financial centre. The 37th edition of the Global Financial Centres Index showed London retains its number 2 global ranking and is closing the gap on New York. Now, the Big Apple tops the rankings overall, it has done for years, and I suspect it always will. London can't compete with the depth of its capital markets, but it can compete in other areas. Indeed, we're listed as number 1 for banking, and we're climbing high when it comes to fintech. Those are our strengths, and we should play to them. Now, I have one final optimistic note to share, which is, as I hope you've seen, that the finalists in the City AM Awards have been revealed. You can find them in print. You can find them listed online. A phenomenal bunch of entrepreneurs, businesses large and small. Going to be an incredible celebration at the Guildhall on the 6th of May. And I would urge you to go to cityamevents.co.uk to find out more about those finalists and to book some tickets to join us on the night. That is it from me this week. Stay up to date and in the know with the City AM app and on cityam.com. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you next week.